What if I told you that one of the most sought-after, luxurious condiments in history was made from sun-rotted fish guts left to ferment in giant vats for months until they dissolved into a pungent, salty sludge? It sounds like a nightmare, but for the Roman Empire, this was liquid gold. It was a flavor so essential that it fueled an entire industry, with factories dotting the Mediterranean coast. This single example reveals a shocking truth: our modern idea of what's delicious, what's normal, and what's disgusting is a fragile concept built on the luxury of choice. Long before supermarkets and refrigerators, the human diet was a wild, unpredictable landscape shaped by three powerful forces: status, survival, and belief. The foods people ate weren't just for sustenance. They were symbols of power, desperate measures in the face of starvation, and conduits for magic and medicine. Today, we're peeling back the layers of history to uncover the most bizarre and unbelievable things people used to eat and the forgotten stories behind them. The ancient world was a stage, and for the ultra-wealthy, food was the ultimate performance. In the lavish banquet halls of Rome, status wasn't just shown by the gold on your wrist, but by the sheer absurdity on your plate. Forget steak and lobster. True power was serving something so exotic and wasteful it left no doubt about your influence. The perfect example: flamingo tongues. Imagine a whole, magnificent pink bird captured and killed for a single, tiny morsel. The rest of the animal was often discarded. The tongue was roasted and served as a delicacy, not because it tasted exceptional, but because it screamed wealth. It was a dish that said, "I am so rich, I can destroy beauty for a fleeting taste." This was the pinnacle of conspicuous consumption, an edible trophy for the Roman 1%, but the spectacle didn't stop there. In Persia and later in Rome, the peacock was the centerpiece of choice. This wasn't just about eating a bird. It was about creating a work of art. The peacock would be painstakingly cooked, then its own dazzling feathers would be reattached to the body, often with its crest and tail feathers arranged in full, glorious display. It was presented to guests looking as if it were still alive, a breathtaking illusion that turned dinner into theater. The meat itself was known to be tough and not particularly flavorful, but that was irrelevant. The point was the visual shock and awe, a testament to the host's power and ability to command nature itself. And for the Romans, the ambition to turn the inedible into a delicacy reached its peak with one of the most bizarre dishes ever recorded: stuffed so's womb. Prepared by boiling it and then packing it with spiced meats and grains, this dish was designed to test the limits of culinary decency. It was a direct challenge to taboos, served specifically to impress and shock guests, proving that a truly powerful host could transform even the most unsettling anatomy into a gourmet experience. While the elite feasted on these elaborate displays, their meals were often enhanced by a seasoning that was, for a time, more valuable than gold. But this wasn't just a simple spice, it was a legendary plant that held the ancient world in its grip before vanishing from the face of the earth. It was called Silphium, and it grew only along a narrow strip of coastline in modern-day Libya. The Romans were obsessed with it. Its resinous juice was a flavor enhancer so profound, it was used in almost every savory dish, from braised meats to simple vegetables. But its value went far beyond taste. Ancient texts describe Silphium as a miracle cure for everything from coughs and fevers to warts and leprosy. More importantly, it was widely believed to be the world's most effective contraceptive and abortifacient, a secret passed down through generations. This made it not just a food, but a cornerstone of medicine and family planning. Its stalk was roasted, its roots were eaten fresh, and its sap was grated over meals like parmesan. Demand skyrocketed. The Romans, in their insatiable desire for it, harvested it to the point of no return. The last known stalk was reportedly presented to the Emperor Nero as a curiosity. Today, Silphium is extinct. We will never know its true flavor or verify its incredible powers. It exists only as a ghost in ancient texts and on old coins, a cautionary tale of how flavor that defined an era could be loved to death. The loss of Silphium was a tragedy, but many other ancient staples were born from a completely different philosophy, one that embraced decay as a form of creation. Long before we understood microbiology, ancient cultures mastered the art of fermentation to preserve food and unlock intense new flavors. And none were more infamous than garum. This was the ketchup of the Roman world, a sauce made by layering fish intestines, blood, and other viscera with salt and leaving it to putrefy under the Mediterranean sun for months. As the mixture rotted, the fish's own digestive enzymes would break down the tissues, creating a potent, protein-rich liquid. The stench from garum factories was said to be so overwhelming that they were relegated to the outskirts of cities. Yet, the final product was a savory, umami-packed condiment that was used in nearly every dish, from glazing roasted meats to seasoning vegetables. It was so integral to the Roman economy that its production was a massive, industrial-scale operation. On the other side of the world, the nomadic tribes of the Central Asian steppes, like the Scythians and Mongols, had their own fermented staple, kumi. They would milk their mares and pour the milk into leather bags, churning it until it began to ferment. The result was a tangy, effervescent, and slightly alcoholic beverage similar to a thin, fizzy yogurt. For warriors on the move, kumi was a vital source of calories, vitamins, and gut-friendly probiotics in a landscape where agriculture was impossible. It was their energy drink, their social beverage, and their connection to the animals that ensured their survival. But fermented foods were a product of planning and patience. For many people, survival was a more immediate concern, forcing them to look for protein in places we now find unthinkable. In the ancient world, insects and rodents weren't pests. They were a reliable and abundant food source. In the Middle East, swarms of locusts were seen not as a plague but as a bounty from the sky. They were netted, roasted over open flames until they were crispy, and eaten by the handful like a salty, crunchy snack. They were a readily available, protein-packed food that required minimal effort to prepare. The Romans, with their flair for the dramatic, took rodent consumption to another level. They didn't just eat any mouse, they prized the dormouse. These small rodents were specifically bred and fattened in large terracotta jars called glararia, which had little shelves for them to run on. Once they were plump, they were stuffed with minced pork and herbs, then baked or boiled. They were considered a refined appetizer, a crunchy, savory bite to be enjoyed at the beginning of a lavish feast. Meanwhile, in Mesoamerica, the Aztecs harvested something they called insect caviar. These were the larvae and pupae of giant ants known as escamoles. They were dug up from the roots of agave plants and pan-fried with butter and spices. The result was a dish with a creamy, nutty flavor and a texture like cottage cheese, so prized that it was reserved for the elite. For common people in the Levant, survival was less glamorous. Roasted rats and mice were a regular part of the diet, a practical way to supplement meals during lean seasons when larger game was scarce. This level of resourcefulness led to some of the most ingenious cooking methods ever devised. In Iron Age Britain, cooks faced a prickly problem: how to prepare a hedgehog. Their solution was brilliant. They would encase the entire animal in a thick layer of wet clay and place it directly into the embers of a fire. As the clay baked hard, it trapped the heat and steam, cooking the meat inside. Once it was done, the hardened clay shell was cracked open. The spines, which were embedded in the clay, would pull away cleanly, revealing perfectly tender, roasted meat. It was a natural cooking vessel and a spinning tool all in one. Further north, in the brutal cold, nothing from a slaughtered animal could be wasted. Blood, which would normally be discarded, was a precious source of iron and calories. In prehistoric Britain, it was mixed with oats, suet, and herbs, then boiled inside an animal's stomach or intestine to create blood pudding. This dense, iron-rich sausage was a vital survival food that provided warmth and energy through the unforgiving winters. In the even harsher environment of the Arctic, the Inuit and Norse peoples faced a deadly threat: scurvy. With no access to fruits or vegetables, they found their vitamin C in the most unlikely of places: raw whale skin and blubber, a dish known as matak. Eaten fresh, its rubbery texture and nutty flavor delivered the essential nutrients that kept them alive. The same principle applied in the vast, frozen expanse of Siberia. The indigenous tribes there knew that even the hooves of a reindeer held value. They were smoked or slow-stewed for hours to break down the tough cartilage and extract the rich collagen and nutrients within. It was a testament to the human ability to find sustenance in the most unforgiving parts of nature. This incredible resourcefulness often led ancient cultures to consume animals that today are strictly off-limits, crossing taboos that feel absolute to us. The most jarring example is the consumption of dog meat. For modern Western societies, where dogs are beloved companions, the idea is horrifying. But in the context of ancient Rome, it was a grim reality of military life. For Roman soldiers on long, grueling campaigns, far from supply lines, dog meat was a source of protein and warmth. It was stewed with local herbs and roots, a battlefield meal born from pure necessity. It wasn't a delicacy or a preferred food, but a survival ration for men pushed to their absolute limit. This wasn't an isolated practice. Various cultures throughout history have consumed dog meat, often for ritualistic purposes or as a last resort in times of famine. It highlights a fundamental difference in perception. The line between pet and protein is a cultural one, not a universal law. These controversial meals force us to confront the stark realities of the past, where the comforting distinctions we make today simply didn't exist. Looking back, the diets of the ancient world can seem like a collection of bizarre, stomach-churning experiments. They ate for power, feasting on the tongues of exotic birds and the wombs of pigs. They ate for magic, consuming raw liver and the flesh of crocodiles to absorb their strength. They ate for survival, finding protein in insects, rodents, and blood, and devising ingenious ways to cook spiny hedgehogs and leathery hooves. They even ate a plant into extinction. Each of these foods tells a story about a world without the safety net of modern agriculture and global supply chains, a world where ingenuity, desperation, and belief dictated what was on the menu. But it begs a final, thought-provoking question. As we judge the past from our comfortable present, what will future generations find shocking about our diets? Will they recoil in horror at our neon-colored energy drinks packed with synthetic chemicals? Will they be baffled by our obsession with cheese that comes from a spray can or meat grown in a laboratory? Perhaps the most shocking thing of all is how quickly our definition of normal can change. The ancient world proves that when it comes to the human appetite, there are no rules, only the endless, driving quest for the next meal, no matter what it is.